All right, good evening. Welcome to the Corning Museum of Glass Hot Glass demonstration. This is our 6 o'clock late show, and this is a live streamed demonstration. We have two guest artists with us. They have been teaching over at the studio this past week. We have Karina Guévin Cédric Ginart, and they're going to be making a beautiful goblet together. Yeah, so whenever you guys want to start, I'm going to be chatting throughout the process. Folks at home, if you have any questions, we do have someone that can get those questions to me, and folks here at the museum, if you have any questions, shout them out. We'd be happy to answer them. And if I don't know the answers, I'll ask Karina and Cedric and hopefully get some answers for you. So we're here in the Amphitheater Hot Shop, but we are not going to be using any of our Hot Shop equipment. We are going to be using some torches, some flame working torches. So this is a flame working process. You might have seen this up in the amphitheater, or the Innovation Gallery today. How many of you saw a flame working demonstration? Awesome, yep. So they made some small, I hope you guys saw one today, yep. Yeah, so they've been over at the studio. The studio offers a lot of classes, and we have some students. These are some of their students. They've been taking classes, taking the class with them. Have you taken classes with them before? Yes. No, we have Jen and Catherine, so they'll be here, yeah. And I'm assuming we have some students in the audience as well? Yes, awesome. Cool. What's that? Canadian students. Welcome. Yes. So they're from we're outside Montreal? Yeah. Yeah. So we're happy to have them here at the studio and here at the Corning Museum of Glass. So they're going to be working in a collaborative way tonight. So they'll be making different pieces and parts. I'd like to point out this beautiful goblet that they brought over to display. And so maybe he's going to drop the glass down into a mold. Kayla's going to be doing some AV work, and I'll try to kind of let her know where the action's going to happen, because she's used to working in our hot shop, and this is kind of a different setup. So we'll get some different views. Cedric's working on something, and I kind of recognize this as far as our optic molds. So he's got a really teeny tiny optic mold that he dropped the glass in, and it pushed the glass into these thicker and thinner areas, which will change the optics of the glass. So it'll change how the light catches the glass. And of course, I recognize those diamond shears. So instead of gathering glass out of the furnace, they've got these rods of glass, tubes of glass that they'll be using to create these different pieces. Now, I do believe they have a sketch on that table of what they're making tonight. Kayla, can you pick up a quick picture of that sketch? Yeah, there we go. Check this out. It's got a swan. And inside the cup, there's these little bubbles, and each one of the little bubbles, there's a rubber ducky. A glass rubber ducky. Now, oh, there we go. You can see all the little rubber duckies in there. So cute. You'll have to come check out this goblet. It's got birds. It's got tiny little hedgehogs. It's incredible. They brought this over. Lots of different birds. Oh, there's a nice close-up view. If you go down a little bit, Kayla, there's that little hedgehogs. It's a little hard to see, but you can see them kind of. They're tiny and cute. So when you want to get really nice, fine detail and really small glass objects, this is your process. If you tried to make a teeny tiny hedgehog out of our glory hole, the whole thing would melt up instantly out of our soft glass. And so they're using borosilicate glass. How many of you are familiar with borosilicate glass? A couple of you. Now, who's familiar with Pyrex? Everybody, right? Pyrex is a brand of borosilicate glass. So you're all familiar with borosilicate glass. Maybe just didn't realize it. So borosilicate glass has a much higher melting temperature. So you can see they've got these torches to melt the glass. And they run a little hotter than our melting furnace. And I think they run around 3,000 to 4,000 degrees. And you'll see them adjusting them throughout the process. There she goes. Karina was just adjusting her torch to get the right flame. And they're going to be making the details for the swan goblet with the little tiny rubber duckies. And as they were setting up, I noticed this little box. And I have one of those little boxes, and I use it for beads that I string, maybe from jewelry making. And inside that little box, she's got little tiny glass objects. I saw little tiny glass pigs. And I believe Karina do you make the little animals, Karina?
Yes.
You're the one that makes the little tiny animals?
Yeah.
And do you do most of the blowing of the vessels, Cedric? Yeah. Oh, there's our box. See the little tiny pigs. There's some leaves and flowers and maybe some berries. But all these little different beautiful little pieces of glass that they can use and incorporate in their work. So they're teaching a class over at the studio. Is it a beginning class or an advanced class? An advanced class. A next steps class? Yeah, so you can go in if you wanted to take a beginning class, so you had no experience in flame working or glass blowing. You could go in and learn all the basic skills like turning on the torch and melting the glass in the flame. Or for a class like this, you have to have a little bit of experience first because you want to be on the same level as all the other students. So this is a more advanced class. And so all of their students had to have prior flame working experience, and then they learn techniques and styles of working. And that's over at the studio. Did anyone make their own glass today? A couple of you? Nice. Yeah, this is one of the few places where you can walk in off the street with no glass experience, sit down near the bench, and make a flower or inflate an ornament with the help of an experienced glassmaker. That's the important part, right? We don't just throw you into the bench and throw you some tools and tell you to go ahead and gather. We give you a little bit of help. And so you can make your own glass here at the Corning Museum of Glass. Now, once you've taken a few classes, then you can come back and take a week-long class. Over the summer, we offer many week-long classes. There's a class in the hot shop. There's classes in the flame shop. Sometimes we offer cold working, which is cutting, engraving, those types of classes. So it's a wonderful facility for learning to make glass. And it's right here, right across the parking lot. So glass makers from all over the world, Canada, Italy. They come from all over to teach and share the knowledge that they have about glass with other glass makers, which is really exciting, and with visitors to the museum. So we're lucky enough to every week on Thursday nights we dedicate our late show to the studio teachers. So we're pretty excited about that. So Karina's cutting in some little bit of texture. It looks like the swan's wing. Yeah, you can start to see these pieces coming together. So she's gonna crimp in some lines with these shears. So she's got these shears cutting through the glass and just crimping some lines. So see all that really nice detail she can get, those nice feathers on the edge. So she just heats it up in the torch, brings it out, and cuts through it. Cedric's got a graphite paddle. Graphite is really nice to shape glass with because no matter, well, it won't burn or catch on fire, and it won't stick to the glass. So he can shape the glass with the graphite, and it won't catch on fire. And the glass glides along it nice and easily. Always turning. So whatever type of glass you're working, whether you're working furnace glass or this torch glass, if you're trying to make something round and symmetrical, you got to keep the pipe turning. And so it's not a pipe in this case, it's a rod of glass. And so he keeps that rod of glass. Karina's doing some sculpting. She's not making something round. She's not trying to make it even. She's just trying to cut and create these little feathers on the edge. So she doesn't have to keep this turning. So it all depends on what you're making, what needs to happen. So you can see he can add more material or create different ways to hold the glass by joining two rods together. Gravity is one of our favorite tools. You can use gravity to kind of stretch that out. That's a neat, I like seeing that when you want to cut the glass without using shears, you can pull it to a fine thread and then run it through the flame, and the fine thread will burn away and it essentially cuts the glass. So he handed off that little bit of glass. It lifts straight up. Did you guys get that? Okay. And put it into this oven over here where they'll keep that piece nice and hot until they're ready to use it a little later on. So it's just going to hold it at a nice temperature until they're ready to pull that back out and use it for the finished piece. All right, any questions so far? Yeah. Where did they learn the process? Where did you guys learn to blow glass? Or to work with glass?
I learned at the glass school in Montreal, Espace Vert, and also at the Quebec University in Trois-Rivières. It's a small city between Montreal and Quebec. And Cédric learned in France.
In France?
We took classes here many
We
times.
took many
And Corning,
classes
right?
Everywhere.
And everywhere. Corning,
We've been
Pilchuck.
10 times the classes.
They've been to Corning many times to take classes. So they, Karina learned in art school, Cédric learned in France, and they've taken classes for many years. They've both been working with glass for over 20 years. And so what you're seeing here is a difficult process that looks easy because they've been doing this for many years. Now, I don't know a lot about working on a torch, but I do know that what he did there was, I think he was pulling a point. Yeah, so he took the tube. So when we want to make something out of a tube of glass, we have to pull it to a point. So he got the tube hot, so he held it in the torch and kind of spun it till it was, now he's got to cool it off to be able to hold on to it. So he's got some paper that's soaked in water. It looks like he's just cooling it off. Because yeah, he did just pull that, and it is hot. You can see the steam kind of coming off of that. And so now he's got to work on it, so he just cooled it off a little bit. So he got the tube hot and then pulled it to the point, and that will allow him to create the bubble. So I believe he'll use that tube. It's still a tube. It's just a much thinner tube. He'll use that to blow and inflate the bubble. So this will become a bubble or a vessel, like for the goblet.
I'm making the foot.
You're making the foot. So this will be the foot. A blown foot. Okay, we have a question from one of our viewers at home. And the question is, if you could work with any artist that you've never worked with before, who would it be? Yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah, our viewers tend to come up with really tricky questions. All of them. They'd work to.
Yeah. Tu peux lui dire.
I will work with Le Nôtre to make fontaines.
Did everyone hear that? Say it again. Leonard?
I would like to work with Chagall.
With Shaidao?
Yeah. Oh my God. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
It's my favorite artist.
Awesome. More? This is another question. As artists and makers, we get asked a lot, and the question was, what was the most difficult piece you've ever made and why?
Oh.
This one?
I think it's this one.
Yeah.
Because of the size and the stress
Oh, yeah.
and the mix between the blown work that is super, super thin and the solid work that is really heavy. So to combine everything together, it was a real challenge.
Yeah, so this piece here that stands about 2.5 feet, Karina is saying that this was probably one of the more difficult pieces they've made together. And why? Because of the different weights in the glass. So some of the sculptural elements are solid, so the birds, so they have a little bit of weight to them. The size, so you can imagine keeping these things turning as you're working, holding them and in the flame and attaching all these little pieces. It's very heavy, and you've got the blown work and the solid work. And so the different weights, the different thicknesses, and just the scale. Flame working, you can see it's everything's right in front of you, and it can be a very intricate process with these small pieces. But when you start making things on a larger scale on the torch, things tend to become much more difficult. Yeah, I would say this is a very difficult piece to make on a torch. Or even with soft glass, making a piece that size is very difficult as well. So I would say, yeah, that is a good example of their skill level. Just looking at the size and all the work that has gone into this beautiful goblet. And I encourage you to all come up and get a closer look at that at some point this evening, because it's just incredible. So you can see Cédric is blowing up this bubble. I can probably answer that question for myself. What is the hardest thing you've ever made? And it's the thing you've never made before. The thing you want to make that you have no idea how to make, that you would like to make. That's probably the most difficult thing you could ever make, yeah. But yeah, definitely when you start adding all these different components, the blown work, the solid work, and increasing your scale or decreasing your scale. Sometimes making something smaller is more difficult. If you're used to making it on a larger scale, if you want to make it smaller, that can be difficult. So maybe something that you're not used to making, or something you've never tried before. Yeah, we can add different materials to change the opacity of glass. So if we want opaque glass, so like this blue bottle that you see, and even the white glass in the goblet that they've made, it's opaque, meaning you can't see through it. And so we can add different things, different materials to the glass to change the opacity of the glass. Yep. Yeah, so it's just whatever you add. To make the different colors, we add different metal oxides and salts. Gold and cadmium, selenium, cobalt, iron. And then once you start adding different things, it just changes the color, changes the way the glass looks. So we have opal glass, which means you can't see through it. We have opaline glass, which is semi-transparent. Then we have our transparent glass. Yeah, so there's lots of different glasses to work with. Yeah. So the borosilicate glass, the Pyrex, that is microwave safe. Yep, but that's a different type of glass, yeah. So the Pyrex glass was developed to be able to take it out of the freezer and put it in the oven or put it in the microwave. Now, if you have our glass, and so we make pitchers and bowls and vases out of soda lime glass. It's the most common glass in the world, silica, soda ash, and limestone. If you were to put boiling water or hot water in our vessels, they'd crack and break. If you were to put them in the oven, they'd crack and break. And so it's just a different formula of glass. So it has different materials in it, and that coefficient of expansion is much more different than the borosilicate glass. Yep, so once you start changing the ingredients, that's when the capabilities of the material start to change. Yep, so the boron and the borosilicate glass changes it so it won't, you can introduce it to the heat and it won't shock it as much as our soda lime glass. Yep, if you use it, if you introduce heat rapidly to our glass, it would crack and break, whereas this, you can heat it up a little faster. Yeah? Yeah, so here in Corning, they're developing different types of glass all the time. So glasses that don't even have uses yet. They're just trying to develop thin glass, strong glass, lighter, thinner. So Corning, about 150 years ago, Corning became a glass center. They brought the Brooklyn Flint Glass Works up from Brooklyn, New York, up the Hudson, across the Erie Canal. So it was with the completion of the Erie Canal that they were able to bring glass to Corning. Corning was located close to the Pennsylvania coal mines. And so it was a lot easier to get the fuel for the furnaces to Corning than it was to get it down to Brooklyn. And so the cost of operating was a lot cheaper up here in Corning. And so they moved the whole factory to Corning. And Corning became the Crystal City, where they made a lot of cut crystal. And then because it became a glass center, they started working in glass in different ways. And so developing the colored lanterns for railway lights. So red and green colored glass that they could use for the railway system, which decreased accidents by 70%. Optical fibers for fiber optics were developed here. The very first light bulbs were blown here in Corning, New York. Edison's first light bulbs. And then, of course, Pyrex and Corel, Corningware, they were all developed. There's a nice little story about the Corning or Corel ware being discovered by a scientist, brought a battery jar home, or Pyrex, excuse me, they brought a Pyrex battery jar home, and his wife said, I wonder if I could bake a cake in that battery jar. And it looks just like a Pyrex baking dish. Oop, they popped a little hole in it. Did you hear that whistle? So he's got the blown foot. And sure enough, she baked a cake in the glass Pyrex battery jar, and thus Pyrex was developed. Can you use different types of glass in the same piece? The answer is no. No, unless it's all, what we want to make sure, you can use different types of glass, but what we want to make sure that the different types of glass, that they all have the same COE, the same coefficient of expansion. So our soda lime glass that we melt here in the amphitheater is a 96 COE. So its coefficient of expansion is 96. Now, I'm not quite sure what the COE of borosilicate glass is. 33. So you can see, much different. And if you were fusers, if anyone fuses glass, like Bullseye, the sheet glass, sometimes the COE for that is 90. And so as long as the COEs of the glass are the same, it should be compatible. So we can't mix different types of glass, because what's going to happen is they have different rates of expansion. So just like we can't put our glass in the oven or on the stovetop because it would crack and break, whereas the Pyrex, it has a lower coefficient of expansion, so you can put that on the heat and it will be fine. And so if you mix those two together, and as they heat and cool, it's going to create this stress, because one will heat up quickly and the other one won't want to heat up as quickly. And that creates that stress, and that's when we have problems, and it's going to want to crack and break apart. And it will never completely be one type of glass. So yeah, we have to make sure that all the glass has the same coefficient of expansion, or COE. Yeah. All right, so Cedric is busy. This is the part in the demonstration you're going to watch. He's going to start to heat this up and start to open this up into the foot. So he's getting the bubble nice and high. You can see there is an opening at the bottom. He popped the hole after he blew it up nice and round. And now he's going to start to spin faster, and it opens wide. And now it looks like a foot. What do you think? Using heat and centrifugal force, he spun this wide open into a foot. It's just that easy. All you have to do is heat it up and spin it. No problem, right? He makes that look so easy. Now he's getting it nice and hot. Now he's going to make sure that it's going to sit nice and flat. So he'll use that graphite paddle to cool the glass. And you can start to see the heat leaving the glass. See the color? See, it goes from that very bright orange to a very dark cherry red, and then back to teal. The color glass that he's using, they're using a teal colored tubing. And so when the glass looks teal, it's relatively cold. It's not cold at all, but as far as we're concerned, it's cold, it's not moving. And so when it's hot and soft, that's when it's glowing that bright orange. Do you want to put that on a paddle?
Sorry?
Yeah, a brick.
A brick? Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Sure, we can get a soft brick. Yeah, I'm going to grab one real quick.
took it too easy. You want me to stand up?
Okay, so they're just making all these pieces and parts. And then once they have all the pieces and parts, that's when we can start assembling
Commencez par les petites feuilles.
the piece. Okay, we have a question for Cedric. When you opened the foot, you used centrifugal force instead of the graphite jacks that you have.
Yeah. So I don't have any tool now.
No tool marks, yep.
And it's more fun.
And it's more what?
More fun.
It's more fun and more exciting to watch, yeah.
Sexy.
So the more the more you can shape the glass without using any of the tools, by using our heat and centrifugal force, you won't leave tool marks on the glass. So tool marks are like, for those of you who don't work with glass and you're not familiar with this term, tool marks or chill marks, anytime you touch the glass with something cold, you're going to leave some, it kind of ripples the surface of the glass and distorts that really beautiful, clean, glassy look. And so even the jacks, so when you open something up, you'll find these, I don't know if you can see it here, these lines right here. Those are tool marks. And so it just leaves a little bit of a chill. And so when we touch the really hot glass with some of those cold tools, or even warm tools, even if the tools are hot, it can still leave chill or tool marks. And so the more we can shape the glass with just heat, centrifugal force, gravity, it doesn't leave any chill marks or tool marks on the glass. So it leaves everything nice and clean. Now, using heat, centrifugal force, and gravity, it's not always easy. So that does take a lot of experience. So it's a little easier sometimes to pry something open with the tools, but if you have the skill and you're able to use those three tools that don't involve any cold or warm tools, then it's a lot cleaner. All right, so this looks like a part of the stem. They're gonna start adding some little bits. Did they pull that out of the oven? This one? Or no? Yep. So Jen pulled that out of the oven and brought that to Cedric, and now he's gonna start applying some more bits.
Yeah, just leave. You're doing
The ugly duckling?
ugly duckling, so
The ugly duckling first. Oh, so this is a ugly duckling goblet. There he is, in the picture. The poor little ugly duckling.
leave room for the ugly duckling.
Okay.
Nice and cozy.
Nice and cozy in the center of this ring. This very ornate ring that will house the ugly duckling. So some of this is going to be like a cooking show. Some of it, we've got an hour, which seems like a lot of time, but when you're making goblets and pieces like this, it's not really enough time. So they're making some of these pieces just to show you how they made them, but they've done all their prep work. So they've made all the pieces to put one of these together. And they're just kind of showing you, leaving some of the steps out so that they can do it for the demonstration. But a lot of it they already have made. They know from experience, how long something will take them. So they say, we've got an hour to an hour and a half to make this piece. This is what we have time for. This is what we're able to make in that amount of time, and then to be able to put everything together. That's a good question. Is this a piece you've made before, or is this a new design?
It's a new design.
A new design. So you never made one just like this?
Not
Cool.
now.
Nice. Yeah, brand new design. So we were talking earlier, they have all of the work they create these days, and most recently, is work that's a collaborative effort. And so they have a production line and work in galleries that is collaborative work between the two of them. So right now, Cedric's holding the glass way out at the tip of the torch, and that's just kind of letting it slowly cool, I think. I think that's what's happening. It's just kind of taking it out of that hot torch and bringing it out to the very tip so it cools a little bit more. And then Jen's gonna put that into the oven where we can use it later on. Yeah. Say that again? Where's most of their work done? Do you have a studio at home?
Yes, we do.
So they have a studio that they work out of. 2 studios. Nice.
One each.
One each. So they both have their own studios back home. Yeah, so they make their work outside of Montreal. Mm-hmm. Karina, are you making the swan?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm making the body.
The body of the swan.
I'm just shaping with gravity,
Yeah.
and then I will stretch the neck.
So you can see Karina is also using gravity. She's kind of making the body. She's got the 2 rods, but she heats the white glass in the middle there. And then you can see her kind of swinging back and forth a little bit, not turning all the way around, and it kind of starts to droop there in the center. That will be the body of the swan. And so being able to shape this without pinching and pulling, just heating certain areas and allowing the weight to be shifted to create the body. And then she said she's going to pull the neck. So she'll kind of start to stretch. See how the glass is kind of stretching? Can't do it all at once because the glass is so soft. There she goes, the curve. Look at that beautiful swan neck. Yeah.
Don't make her laugh.
You're crazy.
Again, making it look so easy. It's always fun to watch experienced glassmakers because they make it look so easy. If you've ever tried this, or tried to make a bead on the torch, you'll know just how difficult this process is. So she's going to start to, she's already stretched out the neck. Now she's going to get just the right curve for the neck, using all the different tools. So there you just saw Cedric kind of changing the torch, making it a little bit bigger, because it was a little smaller to start pulling that point, and now he's going to start heating up the tubing so he can blow the bubble. So he's got the foot, and this one's probably going to be the cup, maybe? Yep. So he's going to take it from being this tube to being a nice big round bubble. And so I know, like I said, I've never worked with the tubing before, but I know it comes in a couple thicknesses depending on I believe what size piece you want to make. So if you needed to make something really large, you could start off with a thicker tubing, a bigger, wider, thicker tubing. And to make something smaller, you can use some smaller tubing. So there he goes. He's going to blow through the tube, see where it inflates, where it's nice and hot. Blowing soft. Glass is very soft when it's hot. So he doesn't have to blow very hard at all. You can see once it starts to have a little bit of movement, once it glows a little, it tells you when the glass is ready and hot. Karina's putting a little bit of white powder on the glass. So she's got this little tub of, maybe it's not white powder. What color do you have there? A silver striking color, nice. So there's different types of glass. There's glass that we can add different things. So this one probably has a little bit of silver in it, and it strikes and changes, so maybe it becomes a little shiny or changes the color a little bit. So just a way to add color without using those rods. You can use powder if you want to get sort of a dusty look. Some of these birds, I've noticed she's not melted all the powder in all the way, so it kind of looks like feathers or fur, not like glass. So you can use the powders to get a texture. So now it looks like she's going to start to work on the face of the swan. Cédric is busy blowing up the cup. There's so much going on at this one table. You could miss so much just by watching one torch. All right, so there's the cup. Again, changing that torch from being a wider, fluffier flame to now a more exact flame, a smaller flame where you can create the punty, I think. So the punty is just something that would allow them to flip this around so he can work on the top of the cup. He's got the bottom part of the cup made, and so now he's going to attach a rod to the bottom where he's closed it off that will allow him to open up the top of the cup. Or maybe just adding one of these little bits. That will be a connecting bit. All right, so our swan now has a face and a beak. She changed the flame to maybe let it cool off a little bit, but it also might change that silver powder that she applied to the, reducing or striking that silver powder. So does it make it shiny or does it change the color?
Like glitter.
Yep, so it'll be nice and shiny. It'll bring the metals to the surface. The metals in that silver powder and just make the breasts kind of shiny. Kind of like this vase up here in the front. It's got those shiny handles. All right, so Cedric's going to start to work more on that cup. It's got it nice and hot in the flame. Nice big flame now. Getting the whole bubble nice and hot. See, it moves around a little bit. All right, so here's one of the wings from the oven. So you can see how much time went into the one wing. It'd be difficult to get all that detail if she was going to apply the wing to the body. But now that she has the wing and the body, all she has to do is stick the two together, and she's got beautiful detail on both pieces and parts. So she's got to get them both hot. When you stick two pieces of glass together, to get a really good seal, both pieces have to be hot and gooey. So right now she's heating up the edge of the wing and the body of the swan so that when they are stuck together, it's not a cold seal or a weak seal. It's a really nice, hot, gooey seal, making sure it's all one piece. Look at that. Oh, and Cedric just popped a bubble. We can hear the whistle. He might use that heat and centrifugal force again, so if you missed that, you get to see that again. All right, look at that beautiful wing. Now she's got the punty that was used to hold on to the wing. Now she's going to heat that up and pull that off. Again, heating it up and pulling it to a fine thread and just running the fine thread through the flame. It breaks free. And look at that, we've got a beautiful wing. What do you think? Yeah.
You can do better.
Yeah, once we get the second wing on there, then the crowd's really gonna go wild.
And for the third one.
The third wing. Yeah. You have to anneal the whole piece. Yep. I believe so, right? Yeah. So the box over here that they're pulling all the pieces and parts out of, that's their annealing oven. And so it will stay in there and cool slowly overnight. Yep. So yep, all glass has to be annealed, whether it's the borosilicate glass or the soda lime glass. It's to slowly cool so it doesn't build up stress. All right, second wing. She's ready for it. Jen brings it out of the box, and now they'll start to heat those up. Okay, Cedric's gonna start to open it up with the, he'll start to open it up with the jacks. See, just rounding it out with those graphite jacks. Opening up the top of the cup. We have another question that I'm not sure I can answer because I do not work in this way. So the question was, the wings were put in the oven to be kept hot, but the cup and the foot he's just putting over here on the soft brick.
It's because when you work with solid glass and it's thick, and even if it's boro, it's more delicate. So if I leave the wing on the table, they will break. But the cup are nice and thin.
Because it's thin.
And
Okay.
they will cool down slowly, and there's no really big stress in it. So they will survive just on the table like that.
Thickness, yeah, thickness.
Yeah.
So because the solid wing, it's much thicker, it has different thicknesses, so the thicker areas, the thinner areas might be fine, but the thicker areas will cool differently than the thinner areas, whereas that cup and the foot are very thin, and it's all kind of even walled thickness, and so it can't be left out forever, right? You said? Did you say that it has to go away at some point?
Yes.
Yeah, and we can't even set it on like a cold metal surface. You notice he asked for a soft brick. So if we set it on something too cold, it would pull the heat out. So the soft brick will keep it warm enough. Yeah, so thickness. That was a question for at home, I think, from at home. Yeah, the different thickness. Okay, so she's applying a little bit of that silver powder to those wing connections. All right, so we've got, it's all starting to come together now. We've got the stem, got the cup and the foot, the stem. So this is like a little knop, a little optic knop, these little balls here, these decorative bits, just at the top of the stem that is attaching to the ring, the cane ring. That looks like Karina's going to maybe punty the swan up to flip it around to work on the tail. Yeah, so she's got a clear punty that she'll stick to the chest of the bird and break it free. From the pipe. So there she goes. She sticks it on. Now she's got to let it cool. So watch how the light changes. It's glowing really bright where it's connected, and then once that starts to look clear, that's when it's sort of settled up. And I did ask her a question as soon as she put that second wing on, and we did promise her A crazy round of applause.
We love it.
Yeah, that was a poorly timed question. Right in the middle of when she was just attaching the second wing. All right, gonna make that flame a little softer, reduce that powder. All right, they've got all sorts of little rods and different color rods and different bits to start attaching. This is what's amazing to me about the process is when they have, you know, things, multiple things in multiple hands, and they're keeping everything hot and flipping it around and not running their hand through the flame. I guess that's the question as a furnace glass worker I get asked all the time. How do you know what not to touch? And then here I am asking, like wondering how they're not running their hand through the flame because they know it's hot. Yeah, beautiful swan. All right, the swan's going in the oven to be put together a little later on. Now you can see Cedric's turned the torch down to an itty bitty flame just to heat one tiny area. It looks like he's got some tiny little bits. There's the ugly duckling. Adding just this fine little detail, these little tiny pieces that were pre-made. All right, so now this part is going in the oven. All right, so we've got the cup and this cool contraption that he can grab a hold of the cup with. So because it's an open end, we can't attach a punty to it. So he's got this tool that will grab a hold of the lip, and now he can use that to turn the cup. So he doesn't go right into the flame. This is a room temperature cup. You just saw him holding it with his hands. So now he's got to slowly bring it into the flame. So So he starts at the very tip of the flame, just warming it up, and then he'll slowly bring it into the flame. All right, now we're going to start to see everything kind of coming together. So here's the cane, a little center bit for the stem. Just like Karina was heating the body and the wing at the same time, he's going to heat the cane and the cup and join the two together. Keeping everything nice and centered. And you can see it's still got a little bit of movement to it. He's still got to constantly adjust it, but then when he brings it out away from the flame, it slowly starts to cool and settle up to the point where he can, yeah.
Louder, she'll get it.
Right, so there's the cup and the cane. So you just scored it and snapped it. So when it's cold like that, you can score it, snap the cane. That way he doesn't have to have that long stick on the end. So we'll start to clean that up, and then he can attach it to the cup. Yeah, that's pretty typical. I've seen a lot of flame workers use a tool like this. I don't know what's this tool called, Cedric? A grabber. But I think it is industrial too. I think I've seen them use it in the hot shop as well. A holding finger. A holding finger or a grabber, yeah.
How do you want to call it?
But I've seen videos as well of them using one of these grabbers in the hot shop as well to make like a big cylinder, to make cylinders for window glass. Because basically you want a big tube that's hollow on both ends, so you can open it up into a big flat sheet of glass. And so they use one of those grabbers in the hot shop as well. So yeah, it could be. Yeah, it was on a video. I can't remember where the video was from. Maybe the Czech glassmaker. Can't remember. And I think this little thing on the end is a little counterbalance as well. So when he starts to have the whole thing with the stem, the foot, and the cup all put together, it's going to have a little weight to it. And so I think that has like a counterbalance. I don't know that for sure, but I think it might have a little counterbalance weight to it. So I've got another one of those optic knops. Any other questions? Yeah. Well, I was exposed just briefly. I learned how to pull points like he was doing earlier, and I did a little bit of blowing, just a brief introduction. And so I have a very basic, and I've watched glassmakers work like this, so I have a very basic understanding of everything. So it's like, let's see, it would be like oil painting and watercolor painting. If you're trained in oil painting, you understand how watercolors work, but there's the techniques are very different. So in art school, you probably get, depending on what art school. So there's some flame working concentrated schools, like Salem Community College. It's mainly, I believe, mainly flame working, or very strong in flame working, or different art schools will have glassmakers who are very good at sculpting glass, and there might be some schools where the professor is really good at blowing glass. So you kind of have to know, choose the glass art school on what you're interested in. But when I went to art school, we learned how to blow glass, how to work on a torch. We learned how to do casting, so pot de verre, and different types of casting glass, as well as cold working. We had a cold working instructor, so we learned how to cut the glass and grind and polish glass properly. So we got a basic kind of understanding of all the different processes. He's going to stick the two together here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is pretty exciting moment in the life of this goblet. So we're just gonna attach everything together. So you can notice with the grabber, he can keep it turning, but whereas the cup that he's holding in his hand, he can't keep that turning as much. So that's why it's nice to use the grabber. Like he could probably heat both ends up with his hands, but with that grabber, he can turn and keep everything nice and centered. So yeah, in art school you would get learn how to use the material in many different ways. And then focus, once you get further on sort of your senior year, you would kind of focus in on probably one of those techniques, yep. All right, so he's sticking the two together. Yeah, so with the flame working, the torch working, and the furnace working, the processes are very similar. And a lot of the aspects of the process correlate, but it's a very different process, a very different way of working. All right, he's just making sure everything's nice and centered. Waiting till it cools off. If he lets go too soon, could start to slowly fall off center. And so waiting till it's completely settled up. And just like that, we've got a beautiful cup. Yeah. Yeah, so then talking about art schools, and traditionally you would have taken an apprenticeship in a factory. You would have found a glassmaker and gone through a traditional apprenticeship. And then you would have learned, whatever the master was good at, you would have learned from them. And usually it was like a few things. You would come out of an apprenticeship with a lot of skill in how to make one or two things. When you come out of art school, you have a basic knowledge of, casting, which you can develop a little further if you ever wanted to, but basic knowledge of how to use the material in many different ways to create art. And so it depends on what you want to do with the material, whether you want to go to art school or just go through like an apprenticeship program. Or of course you could find an apprenticeship where you would learn all those things. But you come out of art school with a broader base of knowledge with less experience. Because in an apprenticeship, you're probably working with glass every day, all day. With art school, you have to take other classes and things, and so you don't have as much time to work with the material. But yeah, so you get introduced to different processes, and then which one you choose to focus on and perfect those skills is what you get into. All right, so there's the beautiful cup with the ugly duckling, and then we have the swan lid. A stunning project. Yeah, how about a bigger round of applause? This is a really beautiful piece. Wow. That is gorgeous. Really beautiful.
Okay.